What's up, everybody? We are back with another episode, and this time we are going out of the country. We're heading to Mexico with my very good friend, Regan Archembault, and you are not going to want to miss this episode.
Back with another episode of Moving Out Podcast. This is a special edition, moving out of the country. Today we are going to Mexico with my favorite Mexico realtor, Regan Archembault, and she is going to give us all the ins and outs of what you need to know, not only if you are considering moving out of New York, but let's just say America's not doing it for you anymore and you want to straight leave the country. Regan's going to navigate this for us. So Regan, introduce yourself and tell us everything there is to know.
Well, that's a tall order. Hi, everybody. My name is Regan. Now, I'm a prairie girl from the middle of Canada. So you can imagine just how much fun Canadian prairie winter can be. Think of Fargo, North Dakota, 3 hours north. Colder, more snow, super fun. So I think you can probably imagine why I would have been looking for something a little warmer of the climate. It's funny with the pandemic and these last couple crazy years that we've been through, how many people are either now working from home that are digital nomads that can really work absolutely anywhere, or even people that are kind of going in between. It used to be like, I'm going to work until my 60s or 70s, and then I'm going to retire, and then I'm going to snowbird. And it's amazing how many people are down here. I'm in the Mayan Riviera in Playa del Carmen. How many people are down here, 20s, 30s, 40s, of all ages, families even, that are like, we can literally live anywhere. So why would I not live in paradise?
So it is a great point. I have to say, as it is snowing in back of me and 34 degrees out, I'm having to struggle with that question as well. I did not know where Mayan Riviera is. I'm usually pretty good about geography, but it is on the east coast of the East Coast, right, of Mexico. So
right. So we're just south of Cancun. Now,
okay.
In this whole area, it kind of starts from both there's the Yucatan Peninsula in general, there's Cancun, Playa del Carmen is another kind of more major center, and then there's a whole lot of small communities as well, everything from Puerto Morelos, Buenaventuras, all the way down to Tulum. So there's all kinds of, it really depends on what you're into, whether you want more action and nightlife and liveliness, or whether you want that kind of sleepy, small town, peace and quiet on a beach and leave all that city noise behind. There's so many different neighborhoods and communities here that really whatever you might be into is quite likely here within, this portion of Mexico.
So can you expand on that a little bit when you say like everything you might like might be here? I have questions from people that I was told to ask you specifically. So I will get into those questions, and you're touching on some of them right now. So we'll see if we could check some of them off as you're talking here. So one of them primarily had to do with like lifestyle. What was the biggest lifestyle change that you found? Now it's going to be a little different for you, obviously coming from where you did in Canada, but what was obviously the hardest thing to get used to? Did you speak the language when you moved there?
Not very much. I mean, thank you, Duolingo app. And we are certainly going to be taking more formal lessons to be able to communicate more. Now, in an area like this that is very expat friendly, it's very tourist friendly, there's a lot of English. I mean, there's a lot of people who come down here who really don't know anything besides uno más cerveza y no más tequila. And that's their two main phrases that they know, and donde está el baño. But when you're down here now as a regular course of business, and you realize quite quickly when you're either doing your grocery shopping or trying to pay your cell phone bill or your electric bill or whatever, that you need to go and open bank accounts, all those kinds of things really require another set of language skills, and Google Translate's only going to get you that far. When it comes to lifestyle, so my husband, Jeff, and I, we've been a top producing team in Winnipeg area, and our team is still running in Winnipeg. So we're kind of got our feet in both waters, well, except that 1 foot in the one water is frozen. So one's a nice balmy Caribbean sea, and the other one is frozen in a snowbank. So we're able to kind of run that business from here. I'm also part owner in our brokerage there. I'm still leading all of the training. And another part of what I'm doing now, where you and I got to meet, is through being a real estate coach and now the director of coaching with Jared James. So that is requiring good Wi-Fi and a laptop, check and check. So again, I could be in a snowbank or in the Caribbean, take your pick. When you go from the rat race, and you would know something about this, of just that constant hustle, the grind, where you're running from appointment to appointment, juggling all kinds of things. Now, we've had several changes. We just had our kids grow up and move out. So, I mean, when you've gone from these last several years of going to soccer practice and football practice and picking this one up from school, and this one's got a project here and back and forth, never mind your own business and your own social calendar, go. And, you know, as in real estate, I mean, we go 7 days a week, and they're often in crazy markets. And when you're a top producing agent, you're running a lot. So to all of a sudden just put the air brakes on that has certainly been a change. And what kind of facilitated that was actually starting kind of reverse engineering it, starting it with a conversation between my husband and I in terms of, if work was out of the picture and money wasn't an option, what would you want to do with your day, with your week? And we both had a long list of things we wanted to learn and do and experience, way beyond anything work related. So
You mean you actually wanted to live a life? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I know it sounds crazy, and
oh my God,
it sounds super indulgent, but again, it's funny. Like, there's this preconceived notion that, you know, we need to work until that magical age of 65, and then we're supposed to just go, and then just stop and try and figure out what we want to do at that point. And when we've been so blessed to be in an opportunity to have grown our business to what it is. And we're like, we're in a position to do this now, and to be able to go back and forth and kind of live the best of both worlds. It almost seems foolish not to. And if anything, these last couple of years, I mean, God only knows what's around the corner. I mean, could anyone have predicted, I don't know, any of this? Like, what kind of, like, we would have thought there was a time where we would have thought an invasion of murder hornets was going to be like the be all and end all of, like, this is the next thing. And it turned out to be nothing.
Yeah, well, let's not also forget that we just glazed over the fact that we have confirmed aliens exist. And amongst all of this, they just slipped that right in there in the middle of everything, and they were like, "Hey, let's not talk about yeah."
Right. So we don't know what's coming around the corner. We don't know health-wise what could be coming around the corner for any of us. And then we thought, if we're in a position to live this life now. And it's funny when we get comments like, oh, it must be nice. I mean, yes, we've worked very hard to get where we are. So yes, it is nice to actually reap the benefits of hard work. But on the other hand, you too could make choices like selling your property where you are and buying property elsewhere in a place where you've always wanted to live, and make that happen. When you start breaking it down to, I've been reading a great book, which has been really helpful actually with coaching and everything as well. But Marie Forleo, fellow New Yorker, wrote a great book, Everything is Figure Outable. And when you break it down into each single piece of it, if, you know, this seems so far-fetched, could this happen? And when we started breaking down each piece, well, how would we figure out what to do with the team? And then we figured out that piece. And how would we figure out where would we live? And how would we figure that out? And then you figure all those pieces out. Like, all of a sudden, it's, oh, this is actually possible.
So step one.
It's a matter of choices.
Step one, break it down. Right? Step one, if you were going to give a list, you would say step one is to break it down into something manageable and obtainable and figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go on. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you there. So you guys sit down, you start analyzing what you really wanted to get out of life, what you would do if you actually had the time. And then you start obviously putting things into the planning stage to make that move. So what is it obviously starts with a trip to Mexico, right? Did you throw a dart at a Mexican map and say, this is where I want to live? Or did you did you visit Mexico a bunch of times, and have you been there before? What sparked?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
we've been many times over the years, and this was kind of our happy place. Now, one disclaimer I will say to anyone thinking of doing this: visiting somewhere on vacation and living there are two very different things. So for anyone who's been to Playa del Carmen and the whole Fifth Avenue stretch, which when you're on vacation is all just action and liveliness and live music everywhere and bars and restaurants and what do you want to eat? It's all here, and shopping and everything is woo, party time, which is awesome when you're on vacation a week or two.
Yeah.
And when you live here, if we lived right downtown in the heart of all of that, it would be exhausting, right? So it's that balance of finding that out. Now, until we had spent a little bit more time. Now, one thing to know about Mexico in general. So a couple things that anyone who's thinking about, could I figure this out? Here's some things we need to figure out. There was, when we first started to wrapping our heads around like, oh my gosh, is this actually possible? Could we pull this off? Was a whole lot of Googling going on, like rabbit holes we went down online to learn what we needed to learn. One, as a foreigner, as a Canadian or an American, can we just buy a property in Mexico? Yes-ish, with an asterisk. There's fine print there. So if you're within 30 kilometers of the ocean, or from the US border, those are zones where you can't actually own the property. You own it through a Mexican bank trust.
Okay.
So that's one thing to know. Now, initially you're like, well, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. What does that look like? When you think about the fact that millions and millions and millions of people on both sides of Mexico in so many different areas own millions and millions and billions of dollars of real estate through this trust, how likely is it that the Mexican government is all going to sudden one day say, nope? I mean, when so much of their economy is heavily relied on that tourism traffic. So when we researched everything, again, on a scale of what's the worst thing that could happen, could we live with that outcome? What would we do in that outcome? And then looking back to how likely is it? And then what is it then the outcome if we just decided to rent versus buy, which was the way to go. So we had decided to buy. Obviously being in real estate, big believers in owning real estate. So the next thing that we had to learn was more about the process of buying, and then conversely of selling down the road. And one thing that was a bit of a sticker shock is the cost of buying. The closing cost down here can be 6 to 8% of your purchase price. So,
which for those here in New York, just so that you guys understand, because if you're hearing what Regan's saying, you're like, oh my God, ours are 5%. So slow down, guys. It's comparably, it's not that bad to where we are right now. 6% is about 1% higher. And what are your annual taxes there? Do you pay property taxes annually there?
Yes, and this is where it gets good. This is where, so our home that we had,
make us cry.
Yeah, so our home that we had in Winnipeg, our annual property taxes were close to $6,000 a year that we paid every year. And that was a 2,000 square foot home in a good area, double attached garage, So we're in a condo here. It's not a house, it's a condo, but it's still 1,850 square feet. It's still a good size, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We are in a gated residential neighborhood, kind of one of more the premium neighborhoods here in Playa del Carmen. And our property taxes are a whopping $400 a year.
That's awesome. Here on Long Island, our average property taxes range anywhere between about $9,000 and $12,000 for the average home. That's about a 1,800 square foot ranch, 3 beds, 1 bath. They're going to be about $8,000 starting. So sounds like you could save some money. All right. So.
Well, it works out to about 1% of the property value, what you pay in taxes. Now, just like anywhere else in the world, if you're looking at condos, there are buildings with high fees, high HOA fees, and the more amenities a building has, the higher those fees tend to be. The older the building has, that you've got other things that the reserve fund needs to be built up to pay for, those fees are going to be higher than a brand new building where everything is good for another however many years. So there are certainly variables. And when we were looking at properties in general, whether we were looking at standalone homes, and now that we're down here and really quite happy, we're actually thinking of this becoming a revenue property and buying a standalone home within the same neighborhood. It varies greatly in terms of where you're buying and what you're getting. And it really it's real estate 101. What's most important to you, be it in finishes or features of the property, or whether it's location. There's a lot to know. And we were so grateful that we had found a great realtor who was really specialized in us. Like, we were there, like when you talk about niche marketing, we were their specialty, that they could anticipate what our questions and our needs were. And they really helped us break down, okay, here's this neighborhood, here's what it's about, pros, cons, ins and outs. So we really had a lot of information ahead of us. Now, certainly we also knew what types of questions to ask, but because we're their specialty, their niche, they were able to anticipate a lot of that and be able to kind of front load us with a lot of information. And just like any major decision you make out of anything, the more information you have, the more confident you are when you're making that decision, that you're not going to, be second guessing it or wondering like, oh God, what did we do? Because the other thing that we learned is that like selling a property down here, I mean, everything's on Mexican time. Like, even when we thought like, okay, we're going to get down, we're going to rent something for a few weeks, we're going to find something that we love, we're going to write an offer, we'll take possession a couple of weeks later, like we're going to do a quick close, we got funds in hand, we've already sold our house back in Winnipeg, let's go. And then all of a sudden we get down here, it was like, no, it's good 8 to 10 weeks for closing, because everything is a little bit archaic when it comes to like paperwork, and it has to go to this notary, and then it has to go to this lawyer, and then it has to come back here to be signed again, and then it has to go here. So everything takes a little bit longer. 2 months is about the tightest close that you can really possibly even do. And depending on what the property is and what the situation is, it might either be trickier to sell, you might be sitting on it for a while, or if it is something that is going to turn quickly, again, those closing fees and stuff can be quite high. The other thing to note, now, you don't have to have your residency to buy here. Foreigners can buy here on a tourist visa, that's fine. Okay. So there's several people who will have a condo or a little place that they'll have down here, and maybe they come down for a few months at a time, and then they go back and they come down for another little stretch of time. No, they own it, they can go as they want. Would you mind just I don't want to even interrupt you because this is so much good information, but could you touch base on like what one of those condos might cost price wise? Because we talked about the taxes. You said it was about 1%. So for the people who aren't quick with math like myself, what would be the average purchase price? What would be the average purchase price of a condo if they were looking for, let's say, like a 2-bedroom condo in that area? You can use your community as a reference if you like. What would say if they were budgeting just mentally, so that, somebody listening to you and thinking, oh my God, I have to save $1.5 million. Is it that expensive? What's the average price? For $1.5 million, you can get a pretty kick-ass house down here. Even in this area, it varies a lot. I mean, there are some really great communities that, are safe, that are maybe a little bit further back from the beach, where you, for less than $200,000, you can get a very comfortable modern condo. The closer to the beach, I mean, location, right? The closer to the beach, the higher the price. When you're in some of these gated, a little bit more secure areas, of course you're paying a premium for that, but it's like anything else, you get what you pay for. Right. So I'm in Playa Car. And in this neighborhood, so there's a golf course here, the Hard Rock golf course here in the neighborhood. So the whole housing development's kind of around the golf course. Oh, nice. And kind of between that and the beach. So it's a 10-15 minute walk to the beach. Okay. Or closer, depending where in the neighborhood you are from where we are about that. So there's condos in here that are fairly basic or a little bit on the smaller side, around 200,000, but there's also some luxury, amazing condos with ocean views that are $1 million. There's detached homes around 4 to 450 that are either fairly basic or maybe a little bit tired that need some updating. And then there's some absolutely jaw-dropping ones. There's one that I've fallen in love with that's not in our price range. But there's ones in, $1 million, 2 million. There's an absolutely stunning one on the beach here. I mean, we've always got real estate on the brain. So we're always checking out anytime we walk by anything with a sign, we got to like case it out and see what it's going for, because we're nerds like that. But there's this one place on the beach that is like 10 million US right on the beach. And it looks like a hotel almost. Like it is like super modern and like super slick place. Wow. And it's just a monster on the beach. So yeah, if you've got 10 million, you could really be living it up.
So you also talked about rentals, right? And renting it out. You actually mentioned that, you may consider renting out your condo and then moving on to a house eventually. What is the vibe like for short-term rentals? Is it an Airbnb? I would imagine it's probably an Airbnb treasure trove in that instance. Is the community accepting of that? Are they embracing of it? Because, up here on Long Island, there's basically no Airbnbs. No one wants to Airbnb down the block from Walmart here in Center H. But the Poconos over in Pennsylvania, which happens to be a very hot spot, a lot of those communities, because I was just talking with a real estate agent over there, the physical townships are actually fighting to get short-term rental and Airbnb out and banned from the community overall, which, you have to assume that like almost 50% of the Poconos is owned by investors that short-term rent through Airbnb. And before Airbnb, you had like VRBO and a lot of these vacation rentals that have been around for a long time. And so are they embracing of it, or is it, kind of like what you have going on here in the States, and some communities are trying to like chase them out?
No, it's very, very savvy with that, because this area is so attractive to those who are maybe only coming down for a few months at a time. We're in a number of different Facebook groups, expat groups whatsoever. And there's just constant posts with, hey, I'm coming down for 2 months. I'm looking for a place, 2 bedrooms, close to the ocean. I'll consider this area. Here's the budget. So we've got a pretty good handle on demand. Everything from a little bit more entry level and basic lower price point, all the way up into those looking for like, no, I can afford something better. I want a nice place. I'm going to be there for, a couple months or a few weeks, whatever it may be. And that's really where we started. So when we were first coming down, you come down for a week or two, and then, as we were building our team and had a little bit more support to go for a little bit longer, we would come down for a month or 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And it gave us an opportunity to like, what did it feel like living here for a month? And certainly you're still kind of on vacation mode, but you're going grocery shopping and you're doing laundry and you're going for a walk after dinner. You're not going out every night. Sometimes you're just going for a walk, Yeah. So what does this neighborhood feel like? What does this neighborhood feel like? And even then, when we were trying to nail down, is Playa del Carmen, like it's been our favorite place that we go, is this really where we want to put down roots? Because we had a lot of friends who loved Puerto Vallarta on the other coast. And so last year we went there for a month, and we had only ever been there on the resort doing, the week all inclusive or whatever. And not since our children were small, and now that they're adults, we're like, we haven't really given that a shot, like living there. So we had rented a condo there for a month and had a feel for it. And there was a number of different factors back and forth of why this was home for us. And we'd already, got to meet people over the years, the sense of what the most beautiful thing is. And I was talking with a friend a couple of weeks ago on this, and they're spending their winter in Puerto Vallarta, and we were chatting away, and you plot people up out of anywhere. Canada, US, Europe. I mean, there's people from literally all over the world here. And you put them all together anywhere else, and they just form this sense of community, where now there's dinner clubs, and hey, there's this Facebook that comes together, and they organize these little dinners or events and trivia nights and all these different things where like you just find your people, you just find your community, and it's kind of a beautiful thing in the midst of all this, pardon my French, like batshit craziness in the world, that still is just the human experience, that we come together and just figure that stuff out. I've loved that part.
It can't be said better than that. Because watch kids get along every day. not knowing any origin or where they come from or anything like that, you know, with no judgment, just like-minded interests and having fun. That's really all it comes down to. So that is absolutely beautiful. And I think it's well said, because if you need more of a reason to have to go somewhere right now in the world we're living in, if it's not making some friends and forming a community and having some fun, and if you can't tell by the smile on Reagan's face, I'd say it's pretty damn good living there. So you make this move, you find out all this information. So some people ask, these are some of the questions we got. How does, was there currency conversion that you had to deal with, as far as, did you have to convert money over in order to purchase? And did that affect you in a negative way or a positive way? Like, did it help you?
I mean, again, the stronger your financial position heading into anything like this, that's more of a position of strength to come from. So we use something called TransferWise. So we've got our Canadian account, our American account, and a pesos account. So we can watch the markets and move money when pesos are on sale. And then we just take stuff out of the bank account here. Certain things like open bank accounts and stuff, you pretty much need to be a resident. You need to have your residency here. And there's both temporary residency and permanent residency. That's a whole other thing. And if it's something you're considering doing, I highly recommend that that's a rabbit hole on YouTube that you go down to learn more about that.
Getting your citizenship there, you're saying, as far as becoming like a permanent.
Different. That's when you're like, you know, I pledge allegiance, all of that kind of stuff. So
got it.
Citizenship, it means that you're like, I would be revoking my Canadian citizenship and becoming a Mexican citizen.
Okay.
And so I'm still a Canadian citizen.
Okay.
But a Mexican, well, I've got my Mexican residency as well as my Canadian citizenship right now. So it's kind of both. So I don't have, like, normally if you're coming on a tourist visa and they give you the 180 days to be here, then if you can't overstay that visa, then you need to leave the country, you know, to be able to come back. And there's been, especially through the pandemic, where people are like, I'm working from home anywhere. So I may as well just go rent an apartment in the Mayan Riviera and work from there and do my thing, and like, whoops, overstayed my visa. So the Mexican government has been cracking down on that stuff more. But with us having our residency in place now, we can come and go throughout the year whenever we want. And the best part is when you're going through customs at the airport, we now just take that residence line. So rather than going through that big cattle call from like all 3 flights that just landed within that same 15-minute pocket of time, and you've got all the people and it takes like an hour to get through. Now I just like walk right through as a resident.
Interesting. So did you get, you have your real estate license there?
Still working out that piece of things.
Okay.
There definitely wanted to take some time to lay the land, get our feet wet. We've got some absolutely fantastic real estate connections down here. Fellow Canadians, Americans, even a British guy that was showing us house the other day. Some really, really great contacts. We've definitely realized how much it's important. Like, there's no MLS here. There's no.
That's going to be my next question. Yeah. So how do you find houses?
So a lot of agents will use like Point to Agent as a kind of pseudo MLS system, but it's kind of wild, wild west. So you would want to make sure that if you're selecting an agent to work with, you want to ask lots of questions, because you want to know how, like, well, I mean, not that it's that hard to get your real estate license in Canada or the US either. Like, let's be real here.
Yeah.
But if anyone can kind of get licensed fairly or you know, start selling real estate down here fairly easily, how savvy are they? How much do they know the areas that they understand the values? Because they can't just run comps on MLS to tell you, yeah, sure, all the other ones in this building also sold for $275. Therefore, their asking price is reasonable. Like, without that data, it's incredible how much we rely on that data in your market and mine. And now down here, with that taken away, you really need to be able to trust your agent that they know, no, you don't want that building. They had issues 2 years ago with their balconies or whatever. That building has issues. Like, you want someone who knows the area and knows all these different pockets, that this pocket here has really good values. This, now you're getting closer to a sketchier area on this side of the tracks or whatever. So having someone who really knows the ins and outs of the market in general. and has a good feeling on values and can validate that and be able to ask why. Like when you ask them, like, why is the value so much more in that building versus this one? And they can actually articulate that. And if they can't, run. And you also, but it's really important down here without an MLS that you have an agent who is well respected and well connected, that they're going to be able to draw on their other professionals that do really cooperate with each other to say, hey, I've got people coming in from New York. This is what they're looking for. What do you have in your pocket that you don't have up right now that we can put together here? If you want to make sure it's someone that doesn't have a shady reputation, and that's harder to find out. So you have to ask a little bit more kind of open-ended questions. Tell me some of the relationships that you have with other agents. Can you tell me about a time that worked? And it sounds like a little bit more legwork in choosing your agent. But it's important. It's really important because it's a big investment and you're in a foreign country. You also want to make sure that they really understand the ins and outs of the process inside and out to walk you through it, because there's going to be a whole lot of head scratching moments where you're like, really? That's how it works here? That's so bonkers. Like, how, wait, what? So you want to make sure that someone's going to be able to anticipate those and explain them to you and walk you through them, and are going to have the connections. Like when we bought this place, if we were needing to do work, I don't know any freaking contractors down here. How do I know who the heck to hire? Who's actually going to do a good job? If I give this guy a deposit saying, okay, yeah, here's the deposit, go buy the tile, how do I know he's going to come back?
So I'm glad you say that, because it's going to be my next question. And this is a perfect segue. And I think the perfect moment to address this concern. No matter whether you are transplanting over here in New York and you're going to go to another state in the United States, or you're going to go to Canada, or you're going to go anywhere else, everyone always wants to know, will I find my comforts? Can you find a Starbucks? Do you buy your tile from a Home Depot or a Lowe's, or do you have to like travel down a wooded path and see the magic man who's going to point you in the direction of the tile maker who chips it from stone? What's the
both?
There's both. Okay.
So again, it really depends on the area. Now here in Playa del Carmen, yes, there's Starbucks, there's Walmart, there's Home Depot. All those things are here. The grocery stores are all fairly, well serviced with that. There's been little things that have been like obscure to find. There's Amazon down here. Discovered that the first week moving in when there was stuff that I couldn't find in the stores, and I'm like, "Whoa, look, Amazon!" Whoop, shows up right to the door. Much to my husband's chagrin, is like, "Damn, you figured that out fast." I'm a good little shopper. Where there's a will, there's a way.
You got to get those Tim Horton K-Cups.
Exactly. There's no Tim Hortons here. That's fine. It's not that great a coffee. So there's some great local chains have really good Mexican coffee that I much prefer over Starbucks. But there's a lot of that. You have to, give it some grace that there's going to be some things that are frustrating that you can't figure out, or that are just going to be different. And there's certain things that, I'm going to a conference in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks, and you better believe it, I've got a list for Target in my phone of stuff that I need to bring back down.
Well, I'll be there early on Sunday, so if you need help shopping, let me know. We can hit a Target together. So with that, obviously you go there to escape the norms, right? I don't think the first thing you went there to do is try Starbucks there, right? So like you touched on the Mexican coffee. What are some of the you will never find anywhere else in the world, and you absolutely love it there because of that? What would be, I don't know, give me one or two of those things. You said the coffee, and I get a good instinct that is like probably something you miss when you're not there, just by the way you said it, the emphasis on the coffee.
In this day and age, you can go anywhere and get Chiapas coffee or whatever, right? Like,
I understand it's the freshness, though. That's what most people tell me about coffee from out of the United States. Everything has to be imported here. By the time it gets here, think of how old the coffee bean is, right? So if you live in a place where maybe processing is a little less and you can get something a little fresher, I think the taste just automatically changes.
Yeah. It might sound cliche, but street tacos.
It's not cliche.
Where else are you going to get 4 tacos and a drink for 50 pesos? especially at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Can you convert that to American for the people who have no clue what 50 pesos is?
Um,
Hold
it's
on,
350 Canadian, so probably what, 275 US?
I can Google this. Hold on. 50 pesos to dollars, $2.39 US dollars. Yes, you were very close. You were right there. So wow, that is incredible, right? So if you're going to go there, grab a taco and a margarita, and your money's going to go a little further, which is great. Coming from
again, in that Fifth Avenue, that heart of that tourist area. Of course, everything is a little bit more. You've got all your kind of bougie restaurants, and you've got upscale, you've got downscale, you've got little beach clubs with a bucket of beer and some fish tacos, and then you got the fancy ritzy ones with the beach beds and stuff, and the Aperol spritz and stuff that is going to be more expensive. Of course, again, you get what you pay for. But you go back off that tourist area a few blocks. And really, I haven't really, I don't go to sketchy areas, but any of the areas that I have been walking around, I haven't felt unsafe in. We have found some gems of restaurants, like some of the best Italian food I've had. And I've been to Tuscany. I have been to Italy. And some of the best Italian food I've had anywhere in the world is right here in Playa del Carmen. Like, there's so many Italian restaurants here. It's kind of funny.
That is a strong testimonial, but I'm going to have to take your word on it for the time being.
There you go.
One thing that you mentioned before, that you don't have school age children. So I don't know how many people would actually consider making this move with small children. I mean, this is a huge move to try and, could you imagine doing this with small kids? I mean, you've raised kids. So would you imagine doing this, or do you think that this is something better planned for, maybe a different stage in life, right? You had taught that class at that conference about being fair to yourself, because you have to be realistic about what your capabilities as a parent actually are. And you can compare yourself to anybody, but if they're at a different life stage, you just can't change that, right? Like somebody without children is arguably, they're going to get up in the morning. They're going to have plenty of time to go to the gym, do their shopping, do whatever they have to do. Someone with a child is going to be rushing for the bus stop. Did you get your lunch? Oh my God, you forgot your flute. Let me go back to the house, back out by the time you actually get to take your own shower. So you talked about some of the challenges. So one of the questions that we had for you were, do you know what the education is like? How do they handle education? Is it remote education? Are there schools? Are there private schools?
And that was part of our appeal with coming down here too, is Canada was so flipping closed. And coming down here and actually being able to live life and go out and do things was like, hallelujah. Yeah. But there are a lot of families down here. Now we're in a nice residential neighborhood, and there is a school right here in the area. So we're in an area where there's lots of families. We went for a walk last night, and there's people out walking their dogs and kids in strollers, and soccer practice they kind of use the fourth hole of the golf course as soccer practice in the evenings when the golf's wrapped up, which is kind of cute. But it is very family based. Like the Mexican culture, is very family centric. There's now, would I want to live right downtown in an apartment where there's not a lot of like green space and stuff? No, probably not. In an area like this where there are parks and schools and other families, yeah, if you're living in Vacationville, it's going to be really hard for the kids to find that sense of community, but that's also going to factor into your decision making in terms of what neighborhoods you find.
So would you say that factors into concern? To safety, like concern, would you say that also plays a part of it, right?
Yeah.
You get away from, go ahead.
So there's another family that I know with teenagers, and they have been living right downtown, and they're looking at moving just a little bit further out into another kind of more of a suburb type neighborhood because their teenage daughter doesn't feel safe walking around by herself. Fair enough. I also wouldn't want to live right downtown Winnipeg. Yeah. With teenagers without any kind of space to go.
Every place in the world has a weird downtown.
There's reasons why you choose certain neighborhoods at different stages in your life, so you select accordingly. And what served you well at one stage maybe doesn't serve you as well in another. And you look for, but again, the more that you have that sense of community around you, and you're making friends and you're building that out, that kind of, but so the neighborhood that these other families that I know will live in a little bit further out, kind of on the other side of town, there's tons of families in there. And on a given afternoon, the kids are all in the pool and they're all doing their thing after school. And, so there's areas for that. I mean, not every neighborhood is conducive to everything, and that's just normal. That's just life.
I mean, you've got me sold.
When you coming down, tacos and margaritas on me. I got 50 pages burning a hole in my pocket.
Sooner than you know, I think the team will be disappointed, but we'll move them there too. So if you are thinking of making this move, and you are considering moving outside of the country, I think Regan's given such good perspective from not only a real estate agent's side, but also someone who had to actually go through the process herself. And one of those things is that you got to believe that you could actually do this. Number one, like that's step number one. It's not out of the achievable, right? So obviously some notes, right, that we want to make sure we make. Regan has a business outside of Mexico, which helps kind of, fulfill her dream there. She's in the process of getting her roots in Mexico. So am I right to assume your business will be expanding to Mexico? So in very short time, you should be able to call Regan directly. And she talks about hiring someone with experience. And I couldn't imagine anybody better than someone who's gone through the process themselves being the person you hire, because all types of questions regarding, how are you going to get your money converted? How do you obtain the mortgage? What's the down payment situation like? What are closing costs going to be like? How to anticipate that? Which thank you so much for going over all that, because a lot of the times I think people don't. You imagine buying a house in another country as being something that's going to be completely foreign. And while it is, like, there are really very basic comforts that you can take in knowing you're going to have closing costs. You're going to have a down payment. You're going to have a mortgage, which is federally backed, which is if that sounds scary to you, then you better not have an FHA mortgage here in America, because that's a federally backed loan, guys. So the VA mortgages, VA is a federally backed loan. I mean, we could go down the list of government fund. Sony May. There are so many government funded loan programs here in America that if you cringed a little hearing that your purchase was going to involve the Mexican government, then I hope you bought your house cash here in America.
I think it would be different if you were the first one to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
One of one.
But knowing that there's literally millions in every community, that have gone before you. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're not having to figure things out from scratch. There's a whole lot of people who've gone down the road ahead of you, figured these things out. Everything you need to know, all that information is available. Most of it is free. Most of it is online. So you just start piece by piece, figure it out.
Now, on that comfort zone, did you use an attorney to close down there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And is there like an escrow account? Like, is there an escrow company or a title company?
We found one that was in, very fluent in English, and we handled everything in English. All of our documents were provided to us both Spanish and English. She went through everything clause by clause, that we fully understand everything we were getting into. So yeah, that part wasn't intimidating. Obviously, what's realistic to expect in a real estate contract as well. Bonus. Great. But again, the more you know, the more confident you are with the decisions you're making.
Yeah. And the title company, is a title company? Do you get a deed? Like, is it kind of the same?
You get a deed. Yeah. Okay. That comes later. Like it takes a while for it to all get certified. Again, there's kind of gaps in time that everything kind of works at a much slower pace down here, but it all got taken care of.
Great. And the last question that somebody had, and I don't want to forget it because I would feel bad, jobs and availability for jobs. Like, if somebody was to move down there and say, like, do their U.S. job qualifications kind of resemble? So say if someone was a teacher here, would they find it, is there job opportunity down there? Is, what's...
There's a whole lot of fine print with that. Okay. Essentially, no. Okay. You do have to have your residency here to be able to work. And if there's a chance that you're taking a job away from a Mexican, you're probably not going to be hired. So the vast majority of people who are down here already, they either are retired and they have their income set up for their investments, or they're working abroad. There's very few. There's some that have started up little side hustles of like, oh, I teach yoga class on the beach, or that they kind of do their own thing on the side. I saw someone else who was like, oh, I was a chef back in my country, and I'm, pulling together these meals that'll deliver to your place if you want to, kind of meals on the go type of thing. But for the most part, no, you can't just like, oh, well, I'll just get a job at a resort. Like, no, there's a whole lot of Mexicans ahead of you in line for that job. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And you know what? I appreciate you clarifying that for people because, sometimes.
And honestly, respect it. Like, they got to take care of their own people first, right? They want to make sure that you coming in and that's part of the criteria for even giving you residency is they want to make sure that you're not going to be a draw on their system. They're like, yeah, you can come here and you can live here, but we're not carrying your ass. Like, you got to carry your own weight here. So they want to make sure that you've got the financial income and the investments and that you're in a position to have that residency here and take care of yourself. Now, that being said, healthcare and stuff here and there's several different places that have like health insurance. Now, coming from a Canadian with universal healthcare, that was something to look into, right?
Yeah.
So I could go to a Canadian hospital and wait, 4-6 months for a flipping test for whatever I need. And sure, it's free. Or I can walk right into Hospi 10, 15-minute walk from my front door, walk in, pay about $45 US and walk out with the test results and like have everything done in an hour.
Amazing.
I've paid $45 on like for way dumber stuff than that.
Yeah.
So the affordability of like you hear some some horror stories with like, oh, I was in the hospital in whatever country and it was thousands of dollars. Again, you look into your health insurance options and everything of what makes sense for you at whatever stage or health risks or whatever that you have. But once you have your residency here, it unlocks a lot of opportunities for some pretty affordable options too.
Incredible. Is there anything else you want to add with us?
No, I think that's it for me. We're going out to watch a great band tonight and meet up with some friends and sit outside on a balmy Caribbean night. So margaritas away.
All right. Well, I will let you get to that then. And thank you so much for joining us. That was such great information. And if anybody has any questions, you guys, Regan, where do they find you? Where do you want to give them your Facebook or your Instagram? What's the easiest way for people to reach out to you?
Instagram is at Regan Archembault. You can find me there. I mean, reach out via DM is probably the easiest through either Messenger or Instagram, are the two ways that are probably easiest to find me. You can also find me by email at regan.archembault@century21.ca.
Fantastic. You're amazing. Thank you so much and enjoy your margaritas.
Thanks for having me.
All right,
Cheers.